Glittering Wukui. Suddenly, Xiao Chen opened his eyes. His right hand moved and the snow-white blade of the lunar shadow saber gave off a dazzling light in the dark night. The first move of the Wukui saber technique was executed. A purple tree branch of the ancient divine Wukui tree appeared from nowhere and turned into saber chi. It was fired at a small tree in the courtyard, its speed as fast as lightning. The 5-meter-tall small tree was immediately shattered. Its fragments filled the sky and scattered everywhere in the courtyard. Wukui transforms to Qi. The second move of the Wukui saber technique was executed. Immediately, an entire divine Wugi tree appeared from nowhere and turned into several dozen strands of purple saber Qi, and struck all the fragments of the tree in the air from earlier into powder. Qi breaks Wukui. Xiao Chen shouted and executed the third move of the Wukui saber technique. Immediately, the purple saber Qi that filled the sky quickly gathered together and formed an extremely sharp saber Qi. Under the direction of Xiao Chen, the sharp saber Qi entered the ground. A hole that was about as wide as the length of a finger appeared on the ground immediately. This saber Qi was extremely condensed. There were no cracks around the edges, it was extremely smooth. It was comparable to the saber Qi fired by a regular peak superior grade martial saint. Ka Ca. Xiao Chen withdrew his saber and looked at the scenery in the courtyard. He revealed a faint smile. The foundational moves of the Wukui saber technique were already much stronger than the first 10 moves of the Lingan saber technique. Of course, that was not to say that the Lingan saber technique was inferior to the Wukui saber technique. The Lingan saber technique was a peak earth-ranked saber technique as well. If someone could perfectly merge the state of mountain and state of cloud together and execute the Lingan saber technique, it would be comparable to the Wukui saber technique. It could only be said that the Wukui saber technique was more suitable for Xiao Chen. In his hands, the might of the Wukui saber technique would be stronger than the Lingan saber technique. Because Xiao Chen was currently in the Yun clan, he did not dare to cause too much commotion. When Xiao Chen executed these 3 moves, he did not infuse the state of thunder. He had also only brought out a tenth of his strength. However, if the state of thunder was infused and all of Xiao Chen's strength was used, it would be obvious what kind of might these 3 moves could achieve. Xiao Chen spent some time comprehending the states of these 3 moves again. After a while, he practiced the 3 moves some more. Xiao Chen did not intend to practice the latter 6 moves before practicing the first 3 to great perfection. The foundation was the foundation, it had to be firm. Slightly past midnight, Xiao Chen stopped practicing with the saber and entered the bedroom. He took out a medial grade spirit stone, was prepared to use it in his cultivation. Xiao Chen sat cross-legged on the bed and grasped the spirit stone in his right hand. Then, he closed his eyes and circulated the purple thunder divine incantation. Boom! The instant the purple thunder divine incantation circulated, without giving Xiao Chen any time to adjust, the huge amount of spiritual energy in the medial grade spirit stone surged into his meridians like a gushing river. A horrifying essence immediately saturated Xiao Chen's meridians. It gushed around within the meridians, it was like a wild horse galloping around without care. Xiao Chen frowned slightly and felt some pain. Xiao Chen sank his consciousness down and did his best to control this surging spiritual energy. After a long time and plenty of effort, Xiao Chen finally managed to tame this wild horse, making it become more gentle. After some time, Xiao Chen successfully circulated it by a small cycle and poured it into the purple qi whirlpool. Ti-da! Ti-da! The purple qi whirlpool spun rapidly, and drops of translucent liquid essence dripped down quickly. This immediately replenished a quarter of Xiao Chen's essence. Xiao Chen maintained his calm and focus as he continued to circulate the purple thunder divine incantation. The spiritual energy of the medial grade spirit stone poured in without stopping. It was only completely drained when Xiao Chen circulated it 5 great cycles. The purple chi whirlpool became larger and its color deepened. The purple thunder divine incantation circulated for another great cycle and the spirit stone was cast aside by Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen stopped cultivating and opened his eyes. Then he said, "One medial grade spirit stone is equivalent to me to cultivating for half a month. No wonder medial grade spirit stones are so precious." And this was how Xiao Chen spent his days in the Yun residence. He would practice his sabre techniques during the day and use the night to cultivate with the medial grade spirit stones. Yun Kasheen would come and visit almost every day. Aside from chatting, they would spar with each other. This was something that Xiao Chen needed. Since he had just learned the Wukui sabre technique, he needed someone to practice it on. After they sparred, the two of them would discuss their insights on the martial techniques used in the spar. The thing that caused Xiao Chen some surprise was that Yun Kasheen had a very deep understanding of the theories of sabre techniques. Yun Kasheen had some unique insights on the Wukui sabre technique which were very helpful to Xiao Chen. When the two of them worked together, Xiao Chen progressed very quickly in the Wukui sabre technique. Within 7 days, Xiao Chen practiced the first 3 moves to great perfection. Although it was still far from complete perfection, he felt assured in practicing the killing moves, which were the 4th to 6th moves. Half a month went by in a similar fashion. Xiao Chen practiced the 3 killing moves to the peak of small perfection. Their might was stronger than Xiao Chen had imagined previously. If it was infused with the state of thunder, it would be comparable to the Lingan sabre technique's everlasting startling cloud and twisting road around peak. As for the last 3 sure kill moves, their might would definitely be incomparable to these. In slightly more than 20 days, Xiao Chen exhausted a total of 30 medial grade spirit stones. The amount of essence his body could contain increased every day. Within a month, Xiao Chen's cultivation was firmly stabilized at the early peak of medial grade martial saint. On this particular day, Xiao Chen had just finished practicing the Wukui sabre technique. He looked up at the blazing sun above and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He said, "It is time I left. I hope that person has not left yet, otherwise, all my efforts would be wasted." Outside the courtyard, Yun Kasheen slowly walked over with a flask of wine and 2 wine cups. She sat down at the stone table and filled the wine cups. Then, she smiled and said, "Bon voyage." Xiao Chen revealed a faint smile and sat down. He picked up a wine cup and emptied it in one gulp. He said, "That's strange, how did you know I would be leaving today?" Yun Kasheen filled up Xiao Chen's wine cup again and said, "I said it before. I am a good judge of people. I noticed something off with your expression yesterday." Xiao Chen drank some more wine and said, "That's right, when will you be returning to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion?" When Yun Kasheen heard this, a trace of a hard-to-detect loneliness flashed in her calm eyes. She took a sip of wine and said, "I won't be going there frequently in the future. I am now the successor of the Yun clan. My priorities now lie with the Yun clan." Xiao Chen noticed the tone of loneliness in Yun Kasheen's words. He remembered something and he asked, "That's right. I have something I've been meaning to ask you. As a woman, why are you so interested in sabers? Furthermore, you have a deep grasp of the theories." Xiao Chen's question was quite sudden, but it was a valid and appropriate question. Most women in the Tianwu continent would choose to use swords. This was easy to explain. The grace and unconstrained nature of a sword was more suitable for the disposition of a woman. Hence there were more women in the Misty Sword sect than there were in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Furthermore, even though some women learned the saber, they would not look into the deeper meaning of saber techniques. There were very few women who could commit to saber techniques with their whole heart like Yun Kasheen did. The insights and opinions Yun Kasheen had of saber techniques could even put Xiao Chen to shame. Hence, Xiao Chen had always been curious about this. When Yun Kasheen heard this question, she revealed a smile on her delicate face. She said, "It is just in my character. I loved the saber since I was young. Then, when I heard stories of bladesmen, I made up my mind to become a bladeswoman. After that, I came to the holy land of bladesmen. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion now is different from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion of the past. I did not get to see any real bladesmen." Real bladesmen. Xiao Chen felt it was strange. Could bladesmen be classified as real or fake? Yun Kasheen explained, "The bladesmen I am referring to are the ancient bladesmen. Do you know why the sword came before the saber?" Yun Kasheen continued to speak without waiting for Xiao Chen to answer. "This is because the sword is an object of rituals. It represents righteousness, uprightness, and nobility. Hence, it was known as the ancestor of 100 weapons. Only people with an impressive soul are worthy of being called swordsmen. Unfortunately, there were too few people who could achieve that sort of ideal. Most of them were pretentious snobs, people who used the name, swordsman, to do hypocritical things. Later on, there were some people who knew they could not achieve this ideal but they did not want to blemish this name. Hence, the saber was born. The saber is different from the sword. The saber is a truly vicious weapon. It is a vicious weapon that exists to kill. There were no restrictions of convention or taboos binding it. It was a weapon that allowed one to reveal their true selves." After Xiao Chen heard Yun Kasheen's introduction, he was deep in thought. He could feel that he was about to find an answer to something that had been bothering him for a long time. Xiao Chen's interest in this topic could not help but grow bigger. He asked, "According to what you said, if the saber was just a vicious weapon, then all 5,000 disciples in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion should be bladesmen." Yun Kasheen shook her head. "Wrong. Vicious weapon is just the superficial meaning of the saber. It does not mean that killing someone with a saber will make you a bladesman. Instead, it requires one to have some pride in their heart, to not fear power and grovel before those with it. This is a kind of brilliance. It can be hidden and withdraw but will never vanish. Otherwise, one would not be able to reveal their true self and would simply become a murderous demon. That is worse than being a hypocrite." Yun Kasheen paused for a while and poured herself more wine. Then she smiled faintly at Xiao Chen as she said, "Actually, I envy you. The first time I saw you, I discovered that you were different from the other Heavenly Saber Pavilion disciples. In the end, my guess was correct. Up until now, the pride in your heart has not weakened. Instead, it became even sharper and more stable. Someday, this will become a treasured saber, it will become your saber soul. At that moment, you will be considered a true bladesman." Xiao Chen's expression turned grave. It felt like he had made an intimate friend. This was the first time he had met with someone who understood how he felt this well. Xiao Chen placed the wine cup on the table and smiled gently. He said, "Then, in your opinion, within the great Qin nation, only a few people are qualified to be true bladesmen." Yun Kasheen muttered to herself for a while and smiled, "You think too highly of me. I simply just explained my own understandings. Whether I am right or not, I do not know. However, the people who have impressed me are the first pavilion master of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, the Thunder Emperor from 1,000 years ago, and Nangong Yan, who is currently the commander of the Imperial Dragon Legion." As the two of them chatted over some wine, they got more and more engrossed in the conversation. They actually sat there for the entire afternoon drinking. They even became slightly drunk after that. Xiao Chen raised his head to take a look at the sky. The sun was already setting and the sky already dyed red, it was already dusk. He got up and smiled bitterly, "I can't continue to chat. It is time for me to go. When there is an opportunity in the future, let's have a hearty drink together again." The horizon was now a blazing red. Perhaps it was because Yun Kasheen had drunk too much, but there was a tinge of red on her delicate face. When contrasted with the setting sun, she was even more beautiful. Yun Kasheen got up and cupped her hands. "Take care on your journey, we will meet again." Xiao Chen nodded and then he turned around to leave the courtyard, heading to the gates of the Yun residence. The scarlet light of the setting sun turned his back red and left a long shadow on the ground. Yun Kasheen's eyes followed Xiao Chen as he left. Only when Xiao Chen's back could no longer be seen did she withdraw her gaze. Xiao Chen left the Yun residence and immediately headed out of the city. He planned to arrive at the harbor of Black Dragon River before it became dark. Along the way, Xiao Chen executed the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring art. His body became like a rushing flood dragon on the road. He was much faster than the dragon blood horse. When the sun completely sank below the horizon, he finally arrived at the harbor. The lanterns enveloped the harbor in a bright light. There were many large merchant ships that were waiting to start their journey. Xiao Chen took a cursory glance and casually searched for a merchant ship. After he explained his purpose and paid up, he successfully boarded the ship. The deck was filled with cultivators who were preparing to cross the river. Xiao Chen found an empty spot and sat down cross-legged. Soon, he entered into a state of cultivation and slowly circulated the dragon and tiger body sculpting art. The night was spent in silence. By the time it was morning on the next day, the merchant ship had already quietly started its journey, traveling along the vast and boundless Black Dragon River. Did you guys hear? The Zaihe twin menace were killed. Their bodies were hacked into half. They died without a complete corpse. That's not possible. The Zaihe twin menace are inferior grade martial kings. They have traveled around the Zaihe province for so many years and have been encircled by people countless times. Yet, they had always managed to escape safely. How could they be killed in such a manner? I heard about this too. Someone had personally seen their corpses. They were left in the devil savannah and eaten by wolves. We just don't know who did it. Haha, I know who did it. I was there when it happened. These two people had met with an unexpected failure. They stopped the Misty Sword sect's Chu Chaoyun and wanted him to hand over the superior grade spirit stone he had obtained in the auction. In the end, they were killed by Chu Chaoyun alone. All their wealth was taken away by him after that. The deck in the morning slowly became very lively. All the cultivators were talking about the most recent news. When Xiao Chen heard Chu Chaoyun's name, he could not help but listen closely. Isn't Chu Chaoyun only a peak superior grade martial saint? How could he deal with two inferior grade martial kings simultaneously? Even if he won, it should have been very difficult for him. The earlier person scoffed, "Difficult? Don't make me laugh. It was simply a one-sided massacre." This was especially true after Chu Chaoyun took out a holy weapon. The Zaihe twin menace did not even have the opportunity to flee. They were chopped into halves with one strike of the sword. That is impossible. I saw it for myself, it is definitely real. At that time, there was also a group of bandits at the Devil Savannah. They were the Zaihe twin menace's helpers. However, when they saw the situation, they fled in fear. The people on the deck all took a deep breath. They did not expect Chu Chaoyun to be so strong. Killing inferior grade martial kings was like slaughtering dogs to him. The rising sun in the east came out of the horizon and illuminated the river surface a blazing red. As Xiao Chen watched the sunrise, he revealed a grave expression. Xiao Chen muttered, "Chu Chaoyun is like this sunrise. The instant he reveals himself, he can immediately eliminate the darkness. He is incredibly strong. I was once defeated by him in one move. If I cannot defeat him in the future, it could leave an eternal shadow in my heart." Xiao Chen withdrew his gaze and recalled his fight with Chu Chaoyun. When he thought about it carefully, he realized that Chu Chaoyun had actually defeated him with half a move. This was because Chu Chaoyun did not even completely draw out the holy weapon. That battle was the most miserable battle of Xiao Chen's life. It could be said to have become a heart demon already. If Xiao Chen did not get rid of this heart demon, it would become a major bottleneck for him. Hence, a fight with Chu Chaoyun was unavoidable. The cultivators on the ship were still discussing Chu Chaoyun. Xiao Chen walked to a quiet area and watched the surface of the boundless Black Dragon River. As Xiao Chen was looking into the distance, a person came over and greeted him. "Little brother, are you a disciple of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion?" Xiao Chen turned his head and discovered a middle-aged man about 40 years old. He was an early medial-grade martial saint dressed in long green robes, and he carried a huge saber behind him. Xiao Chen nodded. "I am a disciple from Qingyan Peak. Is something the matter?" The middle-aged man smiled and said, "It's nothing. My son is a Heavenly Saber Pavilion disciple as well. I am making this trip to go to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. The journey is long, so I was seeking a companion to speak to." When Xiao Chen heard this, his expression relaxed. He smiled gently and said, "What is the name of your son? Maybe I might know him." The middle-aged man revealed a proud expression as he said, "My son's name is Gao Shang. He is a Gangyu Peak disciple. He passed the exam last year and is already a core disciple. I believe that his cultivation has surpassed mine by now." Gangyu Peak's Gao Shang. Xiao Chen was mildly stunned in his heart. However, there were no changes to his expression as he said, "I know Gao Shang. His cultivation has reached medial grade martial saint long ago. Why is uncle looking for him?" When the middle-aged man heard that Xiao Chen knew Gao Shang, he immediately revealed a joyous smile. He said, "You are actually friends with my son. What is little brother's name? It seems like that brat is more capable than me now. It was worth spending that big sum of spirit stones to send him to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion." "That's right. What is my son doing now? He has not ridden back for a long time already. I am going to the Dongming province and the Heavenly Saber Pavilion happens to be along the way, so I was planning on going to check on him." Xiao Chen felt a little anxious. He did not know how to answer this question. He had personally seen Gao Shang die, but when he saw the smile on the middle-aged man's face, he could not bear to speak the truth. Perhaps, it was like Yun Kasheen had said, there were no more true bladesmen in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. However, even if there were 1,000 reasons, they should not have sent their own disciples in to die. The pride of the upper echelons of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion was already all gone. Xiao Chen hesitated for a while before saying, "I am Yi Chen. Uncle, you might be making a wasted trip. Gao Shang had left 2 months ago for some experiential training. He probably won't be back until the end of the year." A look of disappointment flashed in that middle-aged man's eyes. He said, "Then never mind. It is not easy to enter the Heavenly Saber Pavilion anyway. Thank you, little brother." Xiao Chen squeezed out a smile with difficulty and did his best to maintain a natural look. He said, "It's just a small matter. There is no need to stand on ceremony. Quick, look. What is that?" Suddenly, someone on the deck shouted out. Everyone stopped talking and looked forward. About 1,000 meters in front, they saw a huge black figure approaching the merchant ship rapidly. In the next instant, the river surface started to ripple intensely. A huge waterspout surged over. It's a black tuna whale, a peak rank 6 spirit beast. It is equivalent to an inferior grade martial king. Why are we so unlucky? We have only traveled for a while and we ran into the black tuna whale already. We are finished. The people on the deck panicked when they recognized the black tuna whale. Xiao Chen was initially stunned when he saw the black tuna whale. Then he laughed. "Fate is tying us together. I get to meet you on both ways of my journey. Since you came this time, you are not going to get to flee again." "Little brother, what are you doing? Don't be rash. Gao Zhang's father shouted when he saw Xiao Chen rushing toward the beast. When the crowd saw Xiao Chen leap into the air, they all mocked him. The youths today are really reckless, they even dare to go head-on against the black tuna whale. Xiao Chen maintained a calm expression and ignored the cold words of the people on the deck. He looked fearlessly at the 200 meters tall waterspout. Its speed was increasing. Rumble. Boundless clouds appeared and churned above. The clear sky immediately became dark. There were crackles of thunder coming from the clouds. Xiao Chen's state of thunder was rising. Drawing the saber. Xiao Chen's aura reached its peak and he shouted. A flash of lightning tore through the sky, looking like a purple chain. The lunar shadow saber was drawn, appearing almost at the same time as the lightning. Xiao Chen hacked down with his saber, infusing a boundless aura and the limitless might of thunder. A bright saber light appeared in the dark sky. The saber light flashed and the huge waterspout was hacked into half. The horrifying waterspout dispersed and turned into rain, falling on the deck and soaking everyone. When they saw Xiao Chen hacking apart the waterspout, the people below all became speechless. There was an unnatural expression on the faces of the people who had called Xiao Chen reckless. Small perfection state of thunder, I recall who he is. He is the Qingyan Peak disciple of Heavenly Saber Pavilion who fought Mu Chungshe to a draw. So it is him. Since when has such a powerful disciple appeared in Qingyan Peak? I recall there was only a Murong Chong. However, he withdrew from Qingyan Peak long ago. What is his name? Someone on the deck finally recognized Xiao Chen and everyone was incredibly astonished. Gao Zhang's father smiled and said, "This person is Yi Chen, he is a friend of my son." Yi Chen? I have not heard this name before. He must be a newly emerged expert of the younger generation. Looks like there will be a second Murong Chong in the Zaihe province. Xiao Chen's figure flashed in the sky and he landed firmly on the water surface. Half a month ago, he was able to weaken the waterspout with purely his physical strength. Now that he had advanced to medial grade martial saint, it was not surprising for him to hack apart this waterspout when he drew his saber. The azure dragon cloud soaring art circulated and Xiao Chen stood on the water. A huge wave was created and rushed at the black tuna whale in the distance. From afar, Xiao Chen looked like a water dragon on the surface of the river. Wukui. When the huge black tuna whale saw Xiao Chen approaching rapidly, it roared angrily in the water. Countless swords made of water appeared on the water surface and flew at Xiao Chen. A horrifying force was contained in the swords of water. They gave off zzz sounds as they grated against the air. Its speed was extremely fast. Xiao Chen grasped the lunar shadow saber and pushed himself off the water, leaping around continuously. He sent out many purple saber chi at the swords of water as he brandished his saber, protecting himself. Dang! 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 The saber chi and the black tuna whale's swords of water clashed, giving off an intense explosion. The waves generated by the shockwaves created multiple pillars of water. The river water flew up into the sky. Xiao Chen nimbly avoided the shockwaves and the large pillars of water as he pierced toward the black tuna whale. Pussy. The sharp saber pierced the huge body of the black tuna whale. A long wound appeared on its body and blood immediately spurted out. On the river surface, the black tuna whale did not have any advantages over the speedy Xiao Chen. When it felt pain, it immediately tried to sink into the water. The black tuna whale was about the same size as the huge merchant ships. It would be impossible for Xiao Chen to try and stop something that large from sinking. All he could do was leave a few more bleeding wounds on the beast before it was completely submerged. The electricity infused in the saber poured into the black tuna whale through its wounds. Even though it was submerged in the water, the electricity still flickered non-stop as waves rippled below the surface. Suddenly, a huge whirlpool appeared below Xiao Chen's feet, trying to pull him in. Xiao Chen, who had experienced this once before, naturally would not be caught by this again. Lightning evasion. After comprehending the state of thunder, Xiao Chen's use of lightning evasion became even more adept. He was able to travel a distance of 100 meters in a single breath. A bolt of lightning tore through the air and Xiao Chen immediately appeared 100 meters away, avoiding the huge whirlpool. Bang! 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 Suddenly, 4 loud sounds came from the previously calm water surface. 4 200 meters tall waterspouts appeared in Xiao Chen's surroundings. The waterspouts were spinning rapidly on the river's surface, pulling more water into the sky. They surrounded Xiao Chen quickly, sandwiching him in the middle. Every time they spun around, the waterspouts visibly grew. By the time they gathered together, they had already reached a frightening height. Xiao Chen was blocked on all 4 sides. He had no path of retreat. He could not even fly up to the sky. Xiao Chen tried using lightning evasion but discovered that the 4 waterspouts were like some kind of barrier. The lightning evasion that could move him 100 meters was unusable. Each of the 4 waterspouts seemed to carry several tens of thousands of kilograms of force. When added together, it was at least a horrifying 100,000 kilograms of force. The situation was dire, but Xiao Chen maintained a calm expression. He did not panic because he still had 2 trump cards that could help him out of this situation. However, Xiao Chen did not plan to use them. The real enemy had not shown up yet. It was not the time to use them. 3 flowing cloud images. Xiao Chen drew a circle with his left hand and held the lunar shadow saber with his right. Then he created a blurry mark in the air. His heart was at peace and he immediately entered the state of perfection like water. Xiao Chen's figure immediately became blurry and flowed around on the water surface. He was like a small brook merging into the ocean and his entire body turned into water. Bang! When the 4 waterspouts merged together, they gave off a loud sound. The surface of the entire Black Dragon River started fluctuating. Not far away, the merchant ship was rocked left and right by the huge waves. The crowd on the deck was doing their best to maintain their balance. We are finished. Added together, the 4 waterspouts contain at least 100,000 kilograms of force. This fellow is going to fall here. When the people on the deck saw Xiao Chen being swallowed up by the waterspouts, they felt incomparable regrets. The huge merged waterspout rushed up to the sky. It was now at least 500 meters high and was much stronger than any waterspout that existed before. After creating such a strong waterspout, the black tuna whale had definitely exhausted a significant amount of essence. Wukui. Just when the crowd was feeling sorry for Xiao Chen, a human figure appeared from the top of the waterspout and jumped out unharmed. How could this be? That is 100,000 kilograms of force. Even a medial-grade martial king would be crushed into mush. How can he, a medial-grade martial saint, be fine? The people on the deck exclaimed. Xiao Chen indeed could not withstand 100,000 kilograms of force. Even 50,000 kilograms of force would be able to severely injure him. Unfortunately, this force was not dealt by a fist. Instead, it was the result of 4 waterspouts merging together. After Xiao Chen entered the state of perfection like water, he had merged together with the water. How could waterspouts hurt him then? Up in the sky, the dark clouds churned even more intensely. Bolts of lightning tore through the sky occasionally. Xiao Chen fired his spiritual sense into the water like an arrow. Soon, it found the black tuna whale that had sank to the bottom. Xiao Chen laughed coldly and started to gather a boundless momentum. Rumble. When Xiao Chen's aura was gathered to the peak, a large whirlpool of electricity appeared in the sky. Powerful bolts of lightning flickered around the whirlpool. A horrifying scene was formed, like it was the Armageddon. At this moment, Xiao Chen's heart was as still as water. He was planning to try a move that he had only imagined in the past. That was to merge all the moves in the Rushing Thunder Sabre technique into a brand new move. In the past, Feng Feishui had told Xiao Chen that there was a Rushing Thunder third chain chop after the Rushing Thunder second chain chop. Ever since then, Xiao Chen had never given up on trying to comprehend the Rushing Thunder third chain chop. However, regardless of what Xiao Chen had tried, the momentum built up by the Rushing Thunder Sabre technique was completely exhausted after the Rushing Thunder second chain chop. There was no way to link the Rushing Thunder third chain chop. Since Xiao Chen had realized that, he got an idea. Perhaps, the true Rushing Thunder third chain chop was not linked to the Rushing Thunder second chain chop. Instead, it was a completely new move. When Xiao Chen comprehended the state of thunder, he was even more sure about his idea. The so-called Rushing Thunder third chain chop was actually the merge of all the moves before it. It merged all the momentum that would be gathered by the 5 moves and released them all together. Suddenly, Xiao Chen shouted and countless war horses made of electricity came galloping out of the huge electricity whirlpool. It looked incredibly mighty. The sound of 10,000 horses stampeding and 1,000 soldiers marching came from the sky. This sound merged with the rolling thunder, raising Xiao Chen's momentum significantly. This was the true Rushing Thunder second chain chop. Rushing thunder roars, 10,000 horses galloping. In the next moment, Xiao Chen led the huge army and rushed into the water. A huge and dense purple saber chi spilt the vast black dragon river into half with a loud bang. Xiao Chen's falling body paused in the air. His ordinary face looked incredibly grave. The brilliant lunar shadow saber quickly pointed at the black tuna whale. The army of electric horses and soldiers immediately launched themselves over. Bang! 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 When each of them crashed into the black tuna whale's mountain-sized body, an intense explosion occurred before they turned into purple electricity that lingered in the air. The shockwaves created as a result of the explosion caused the river to be unable to fill back up. The black tuna whale lay on the waterless river bottom, unable to move. There were more than 10,000 explosions. The black tuna whale was blasted until its skin was torn and its flesh flew out into the air. It was unable to resist the chain of unending attacks. The instant all the explosions quieted down, Xiao Chen swung his saber in the air and all the electric hovering around gathered and entered the saber. The snow-white lunar shadow saber gave off an intense purple light. It looked extremely strange. Die! Xiao Chen shouted and his figure flashed in the air before arriving beside the black tuna whale. The lunar shadow saber easily created a 3-meter deep dark hole in the body of the black tuna whale. Xiao Chen waved his hand and generated a huge suction force, drawing out the beast's rank 6 spirit core from the dark hole. The black tuna whale that had caused so much fear to the group of merchants died just like that. When Xiao Chen saw the water closing up from both sides, he pushed his feet off the river bottom and leapt out of the river. Xiao Chen was holding the crystalline black tuna whale spirit core. It was giving off a gentle glow. A dense water-attributed spirit was contained within it. This was a war trophy that belonged to the brave. I can't believe this. This black tuna whale has been plaguing the Black Dragon River for so many years. It was actually killed by a youth. That beast was the nightmare of many merchant ships. Indeed, when it is in water, it was difficult for even martial kings to stop it from fleeing. This youth was able to think of the way to make the black tuna whale stranded. How astonishing! Qingyan Peaks Yi Chen. This name will spread through the entire Zaihe province soon. Just like Qingyan Peaks Murong Chong. Back then, Murong Chong also rose to fame in a similar manner. He challenged the big bandit groups in the Devil Savannah alone. He killed them to the point where they felt fear at the mention of his name. At that time, Qingyan Peak enjoyed fame for a period of time. However, it was unknown why but Murong Chong left Qingyan Peak. That last move, aside from the weakness of needing time to gather momentum, it is impossible for martial saints to break. However, he is still young, the move will become more perfect in the future. When the people on the deck saw Xiao Chen completely kill the black tuna whale, they all sighed and talked about the rise of another genius youth. The thunder clouds in the sky scattered and the sun appeared again. When the sunlight shone on Xiao Chen, it bathed him in golden light, casting a long shadow on the water. The wind blew and Xiao Chen's clothes and hair fluttered around. It looked faintly discernible in the early morning. Wukui. Just at the moment, a boundless killing chi came from the sky above. The moment this killing chi appeared, it covered the sky without any delay. It was like a relentless gushing river charging at Xiao Chen. Up in the sky filled with killing chi, Umington appeared from a cloud. He sent out a boundless and sharp 100-meter-long sabre chi at Xiao Chen. The sabre chi gave off piercing sonic booms as it rubbed against the air. Everywhere it passed, the wind stilled and the clouds scattered. Ripples expanded out in the air like it was water. Someone on the deck recognized Umington. He exclaimed, "It's Umington. What is he doing?" On the water surface, Xiao Chen placed the black tuna whale's spirit core into his universe ring. He felt the killing chi coming from behind him, but there were no changes in his expression. He was not astonished as he smiled faintly and said, "The person I have been waiting for finally appears." Xiao Chen was not surprised by Umington's appearance as it was something within his expectations. One of the main reasons why Xiao Chen killed the black tuna whale in such a high-key manner was to lure this person out. This was because he knew that this person was an extremely cautious cultivator. If Xiao Chen did not reveal any weaknesses or expend a large amount of essence, this person would definitely not make a move. See. That dense and surging saber chi arrived before Xiao Chen in an instant. Glittering Wukui. Xiao Chen turned around and shouted. A tree branch of the divine Wukui tree appeared from nowhere and turned into a strand of majestic purple saber chi that flew forward. Rumble. The instant the saber chi was sent out, Xiao Chen also used the state of thunder. The sound of thunder crackled continuously. When the thunder roared out, the purple saber chi grew larger. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a similar surging saber chi. Boom. When the two saber chi clashed together, it created a loud explosion. A large pillar of water rose up into the sky. Umington descended from the sky and landed on the water surface firmly. He felt it was somewhat strange. Xiao Chen's earlier rushing thunder roars should have exhausted a large amount of essence. How does he still have so much excess essence left to defend against the killing move I have prepared so meticulously? Could he have been holding back all the while? Xiao Chen watched Umington quietly. A light flashed in his eyes as he asked in a deep voice, "Who sent you to kill me?" "You are really patient. You have been following me since the devil savannah." Umington said in a cold voice, "There is no need for a dead person to ask so many questions." A blue light was flickering on the saber in Umington's hand. His killing chi filled the sky and ripples appeared on the water below him. Xiao Chen laughed, "Kill me. You think that you can escape today?" Wukui transforms to chi. Xiao Chen pushed his feet off the water and leapt into the air. He condensed some saber light and the ancient divine Wukui tree appeared from nowhere, turning into strands of resplendent saber chi. This saber chi headed for Umington like rain falling. The Wukui transforms to chi was infused with the state of thunder. Every strand of saber chi was like a bolt of lightning tearing through the sky. It was synchronized with the thunder in the sky, turning into an unusual mysterious phenomenon. A strange look appeared in Umington's eyes. He knew that he had fallen for his opponent's trap. The opponent had lured him out on purpose. However, the experienced Umington could not afford to lose his calm here. Otherwise, his aura would diminish and he might really lose his life here. When Umington saw the purple saber chi filling the sky, he snorted, "Insignificant tricks." Umington waved his saber and sent out multiple dense saber chi. These saber chi flew at the purple saber chi and smashed them into chaotic electrical currents. In terms of saber chi quality, Xiao Chen, who was only a medial grade martial saint, was worse than the inferior grade martial king Umington. Even when the state of thunder was used, Xiao Chen did not gain any advantage. When Xiao Chen saw the Wukui transforms to chi not being very effective, he decisively withdrew. He shouted and all the purple saber chi paused in the air before they all returned to the lunar shadow saber. A bright purple light blossomed out on the lunar shadow saber. Thunder crackled in the sky, it was like the saber was brewing up a storm. In the next moment, the light on his saber became so bright that it hurt one's eyes. Then, it was fired out with a lot of force. Chi breaks Wukui. The storm that was brewing in the sky also let out a loud crackle of thunder at the same time, creating a huge wave several dozens of meters tall. Pu Si. A strand of purple saber chi pierced through the huge wave and headed for Umington quickly. The light of the saber chi was withdrawn, making it look very ordinary. Umington had a contemptuous expression as he laughed. He casually sent out a strand of saber chi and laughed again. "You are overestimating yourself. You are just a medial grade martial saint. Instead of thinking of other ideas, you actually want to compete in terms of saber chi." There was a qualitative difference between the saber chi sent out by martial kings and martial saints. A martial saint had only just learned how to fire out saber chi. In terms of density, it was like the difference between heaven and earth when compared to a martial king. Rumble. Something that made Umington pale happened. The saber chi that he sent out was easily pierced through by Xiao Chen's purple saber chi. His saber chi was not able to resist at all. Su. Umington did not dare to spend too much time thinking. He quickly layered an essence shield around his body. Then he quickly tried to dodge. However, by the time that he wanted to move, he was already too late. The purple saber chi seemed very ordinary, but it was extremely fast. It broke through his essence shield and left a bleeding wound on his right arm. If Umington did not lay down an essence shield earlier, his right arm might have been directly chopped. The huge wave crashed down and Xiao Chen leapt into the sky. His aura was blazing, rushing to the 9 heavens. Uming's face sank as he kept gathering blue light on his saber. He said, "Do you think you can win because of your state? Go and die." Umington shouted and there was a loud sound. 18 pillars of water rose into the sky. The water pillars merged together and turned into a sharp blue saber. Then, it merged into the saber in his hand. A waterfall-like saber chi gushed out at Xiao Chen. What a strong state of water, Xiao Chen thought to himself. It looks like this was also one of the reasons why my opponent chose to act here. When he uses the might of the state of water while on the water surface, it would be even more horrifying. However, it seems like my opponent's state is not as strong as mine. He had just gained an insight into his state of water. If his cultivation was not higher than mine, it would not be possible for it to be so mighty. Roaming Dragon's 9 transformations. 9 cool breezes blew at the surface of the water. The instant Xiao Chen executed the Roaming Dragon's 9 transformations, he immediately executed the Clear Wind Chop. Xiao Chen flickered around and 9 figures appeared. It was difficult to differentiate the real from the fake. He managed to quickly avoid the waterfall-like saber chi and successfully approached Umington. Xiao Chen's killing intent immediately vanished, leaving only 9 gentle breezes on the water surface. Umington's expression turned grave. He was very clear about the might of the Clear Wind Chop. Umington stomped on the water and a 10-meter-tall screen of water appeared around him. The screen of water moved out in all directions after that. When Xiao Chen's body went through the water screen, the other 8 figures disappeared as a result of a mysterious energy in the water. Umington had used his strong state of water to break Xiao Chen's state of wind. The strong clear wind chop was immediately broken. A sinister smile appeared on Umington's face when he saw only one Xiao Chen remaining. He said, "Let's see how you are going to get near me without the clear wind chop." When a martial king fought against a martial saint, their biggest advantage was speed. Even a peak martial saint could only be moving at almost the speed of sound. Furthermore, without a flying martial technique, they were not able to fly. However, a martial king was different. Not only could they move faster than the speed of sound, they could easily fly in the air. A peak martial king could even reach the speed of sound with one step. In terms of speed, there was no way for a martial saint to compete with a martial king. After they got close, a martial king could finish the fight in a few moves. This was because the martial saint would be unable to even touch the martial king. This was why Umington would say that. Kai. Xiao Chen executed the Azure Dragon Cloud soaring art to its limits. His body gave off piercing sonic booms as he moved in the air. He sent out saber chi after saber chi at Umington, hacking at him relentlessly. The purple electric light filled the air, like a web of electricity. Umington had a relaxed expression. He moved very quickly, like he had merged with the cool breeze. He did not make any sounds and easily avoided Xiao Chen's moves. When the two of them moved, Xiao Chen seemed to have a blazing aura and his movements were like thunder. However, his speed was slower, so he was not able to come into contact with Umington's body. Occasionally, Xiao Chen would be able to get his saber in front of Umington. However, it would be immediately brushed away. Slowly, the pace of the fight was controlled by Umington. Xiao Chen had wanted to retreat several times, but he was blocked by a phantom-like figure. Xiao Chen was not able to withdraw. It was only at this point that Umington breathed out in relief. As long as he could control the pace, it would be fine. He would first slowly torture Xiao Chen, and when his aura was at its lowest, Umington would make a quick strike and completely defeat him. Umington dodged Xiao Chen's attack again and taunted him, "Give up. Your hands are tied and you're just waiting to be captured. I will give you a quick death. Perhaps you do not know. The biggest difference between a martial saint and a martial king is speed. This is a gap that cannot be overcome unless you are a wind-attributed cultivator. Unfortunately, you are not. Haha." This was not the first time Umington had taunted his opponent while fighting. This was especially so when his opponent was at a disadvantage. The lashing of words could cause some weak-willed cultivators to become berserk and reveal a big weak spot, saving him a lot of effort. When fighting with humans, always hold back. This was Umington's principle. This was because there could always be some unexpected accidents. So if he could save some strength, he would do so. After Umington spoke, he saw a weak point and quickly moved. His saber left a small wound on Xiao Chen's chest and he smiled faintly. "This is the difference. I can attack you easily, but you cannot touch me at all." Xiao Chen's expression did not change. The instant his opponent spoke, he pierced out with his saber at a weird angle, piercing toward Umington's chest. Umington was startled and quickly moved back, avoiding the blow. The saber pierced through his essence shield and left a tiny injury. Umington's expression changed. He thought to himself, "I cannot be too careless. Even though he is slower than me, it is just slightly slower." After that, Umington became more cautious. Occasionally, he would leave a wound on Xiao Chen. Meanwhile, Xiao Chen was doing his best, but he was unable to make his attacks reach Umington. The two of them moved very quickly on the water surface. Saber lights flashed and created many water pillars. After half an hour, a light appeared in Umington's eyes. It is time, there is no more need to drag this on. His state of thunder is weaker than before by at least half. Die. Water dragon burst. Umington shouted and 100-meter tall wall of water appeared behind him. Waves surged and the merchant ship rocked very hard. The ship looked so insignificant, like it would capsize at any moment. Suddenly, the horrifying screen of water started spinning and it turned into a huge water dragon. At this moment, the might of Umington's state of water was raised to its limits. It scattered Xiao Chen's state of thunder in an instant. The dark clouds above scattered and sunlight shone down once again. When it illuminated Umington's sinister face, the corners of his lips were curled up into a cruel smile. The dragon's head moved. It was faster than the speed of sound as it merged into the wind. It left behind a series of formless shockwaves. Before it got close, the huge shockwaves knocked Xiao Chen back. Bang! The water dragon moved quickly and chased after Xiao Chen, who was tumbling backward non-stop. When it crashed into him, the vast force created a huge and strong whirlpool in the water. With a loud boom, Xiao Chen sank into the depths of the river. It was unknown whether he was alive or dead. There were surging shockwaves on the Black Dragon River. The merchant ship rocked around for a long time before it slowly stopped. It's over. After Yi Chen's state of thunder got dispersed, he received the full power strike of Umington. Even if he doesn't die, he would be severely injured. The most important factor is that the might of the water dragon burst would be greatly increased in water. Its might was similar to that of a medial-grade martial king's already. How unfortunate. Qingyan Peak only managed to gain another genius after so many difficulties, but before he could grow, he was killed by Umington. Old ginger is still spicier. Anyone knows why Umington wants to kill Yi Chen. The two of them don't seem to have any grudges between them. The cultivators on the deck all shook their heads and sighed. They felt it was very unfortunate. In their opinion, there was no chance of Xiao Chen surviving. The sunlight shone on the clear water. The calm Black Dragon River was gleaming, reflecting the sunlight. It was very beautiful. Umington stood on the water surface and released his perception, scanning and checking the situation under the water. However, after he searched for a long time, he still could not feel Xiao Chen's aura. It looks like he died immediately and his body was blasted into oblivion by the water dragon burst. This places me in a slightly difficult spot. I have no idea how to explain this to Song Ke. Umington frowned slightly and shook his head. Then, he turned around and prepared to leave. Just at this moment, layers of dark clouds suddenly engulfed the bright sky. In the blink of an eye, the sky suddenly became dark and thunder roared again. Umington stopped and his expression changed. Why did it turn out like this? Bang! Waves churned on the water surface and Xiao Chen leapt out of the water unharmed. The saber in his hand was flickering with an electric light and a killing intent was directed at Umington. Umington said in disbelief, "Why? How are you unharmed after receiving my full power strike?" "It is just a secret treasure," Xiao Chen smiled thoughtfully to himself. Of course, he would not tell Umington that, he would just let him guess blindly. Umington's sharp eyes noticed the jade pendant on Xiao Chen's chest and he quickly understood everything. He said, "So, it is a secret treasure. However, this kind of secret treasure always has a limit to its usage. Your speed is slower than mine, I am undefeatable." Xiao Chen smiled coldly, "Is that so? Windwalk shoes. Activate." The instant the windwalk shoes were activated, Xiao Chen's figure flashed on the water surface. He did not give off any sounds as he arrived before Umington like a bolt of lightning. There was a flash of purple light and thunder roared in the sky. The state and the move merged perfectly together, startling Umington. Umington quickly moved his saber to his front and hurriedly blocked the attack. However, because he was caught off guard, he was knocked back by 5 or 6 meters. What a fast speed! How did he break the sound barrier in an instant? His speed is more or less comparable to mine. Umington stomped on the water surface and caused waves to splash up. Eventually, he managed to stop his backward motion. However, he was feeling horrified in his heart. Wukui shakes the heavens. After spending a lot of effort, Xiao Chen finally got a grasp of Umington's strength. It was time for his counterattack. Xiao Chen shouted and the saber lit up with a fierce electric light. The ancient divine Wukui tree spontaneously appeared on the water surface. After a while, it turned into a tree of electric light that was several hundreds of meters tall as it smashed at Umington violently. This was the 4th move of the Wukui saber technique. Killing move. Even if this move was the first one executed, it could still cause the opponent to be forced into desperate straits. Umington's expression changed again. The huge Wukui tree made him feel a horrifying pressure. His essence circulated continuously and 18 beads of water appeared behind him and rushed upward. They gathered and became a sharp saber. Then, it gushed forward like a waterfall. Bang! When they came into contact, the ancient divine Wukui tree completely shattered the waterfall-like saber chi. The comprehension of their states was not on the same level. Xiao Chen's state of thunder was already close to the peak of small perfection. He could infuse the state into every move he made. However, Umington had only recently comprehended his state. He could only use it to increase the might of his martial technique. However, once Xiao Chen executed the peak earth-ranked martial technique and used the same amount of essence as his opponent, it would be incomparable when he additionally infused his state of thunder. The divine tree struck Umington with a boom, breaking the essence shield. It turned into a berserk energy before flowing into him. Then, it moved around violently through his meridians. Umington vomited a large mouthful of blood and tried to suppress the chaotic essence in his body. His face was somewhat pale as he said, "Damn it. Even if this old me ends up half dead, I will kill you." Twin Dragon burst. Umington shouted angrily and a huge horrifying wall of water rose up from the water surface again. Then, it turned into 2 huge water dragons and were launched at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen maintained a calm expression. There were no fluctuations on his face. If his opponent had started with this, Xiao Chen would not have been able to block it. Unfortunately for Umington, he had been overly cautious. He had already lost sight of what it meant to be a cultivator. There was no brilliance left in him. He only thought of how to win perfectly without daring to get injured. Now, Umington had lost his chance. When he executed this move while heavily injured, its might would be significantly reduced. Even without secret treasures, there was nothing to fear. Xiao Chen shouted and the streams of purple light started circulating under his feet. Soon, it became a strange flower bud that wrapped up around Xiao Chen. Bang! Bang! The 2 water dragons smashed into the purple flower bud and gave off 2 loud sounds. It caused waves to form and shockwaves spread out. A screen of water several meters tall appeared in the surroundings of the flower bud. When the water screens fell back down, the river surface became calm again. The purple flower bud looked as perfect as it was before. There were no signs of damage on it at all. Wukui blossoms. Within the flower bud, Xiao Chen shouted and the petals started to open up. It was glistening and beautiful. Then, Xiao Chen jumped out of the flower petals. Immediately, the petals scattered into the air and countless Wukui flowers blossomed. Xiao Chen pierced through the countless flower petals and quickly arrived before Umington. Xiao Chen stabbed out. It was so fast that there was no time to think. The petals filled the sky. This saber strike was incredibly beautiful. Rumble. Umington was knocked far back by this saber strike. He created a large temporarily gorge in the water as he was blasted back by at least 1,000 meters. All the petals that filled the sky quickly chased after Umington. A whirlwind formed in the air and all the petals gathered and formed a strange Wukui flower. Then, it flowed into Umington's body through the wound that Xiao Chen had created. Xiao Chen stood motionlessly on the spot. He held his saber upright and then slid 2 fingers on his left hand across the back of the saber blade slowly. He shouted, "Wukui supporting the heavens." A Wukui tree trunk grew out of Umington's chest as he struggled to get up. As Xiao Chen slid his fingers along the saber, the tree branches grew larger at a visible rate. After a while, countless tree branches grew out of the tree trunk. Then, countless twigs grew out of the tree branches and purple Wukui flowers blossomed. It was merely just the time of a few blinks. The tree trunk on Umington's chest became like a tree supporting the heavens. It was more than 200 meters tall, while leaves and flowers covered the tree. This was the true mystery of Wukui blossoms. First, insert one's energy into the enemy's body. While there was no visible might initially, the next move, Wukui supporting the heavens, would erupt out completely. Even if you were a martial king, you would completely lose your combat prowess after being struck by this move. Umington stared at the big tree on his chest in horror as he stood on the water surface. Umington could feel that the roots of this big tree had already infiltrated his entire body, grasping onto his internal organs tightly. All his internal organs were already damaged. It would be impossible to heal them without a year of rest. There was an indescribable pain coming from his entire body. A boundless electricity was torturing him non-stop. However, this Wukui supporting the heavens exhausted too much essence. Xiao Chen could not maintain it for too long. When the Wukui tree completely vanished, Umington was already half dead. There was an extremely pained look on his pale face as he watched Xiao Chen slowly walk over. Umington was extremely startled. He pushed his feet off the water surface and started flying in a wobbling fashion. Xiao Chen laughed as he watched the miserable Umington. He took out the Soul Slayer bow from his universe ring. Then, he drew the bow without an arrow. Bang! The bow resounded out and Umington fell into the water and was completely submerged. Umington was actually beaten down by a youth until he became like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. How lamentable. Someone on the deck sighed. TL note. A bird startled by the twang of a bow. This is a Chinese idiom that means being frightened easily due to a past experience. Like he had lingering fears. I am not sure if this bit meant that the sound of the bow actually frightened him or was there some actual attack and this idiom was used as coincidentally to describe the kind of fear Umington felt. First, he killed an evil beast and then he defeated a martial king. This Qingyan Pixi Chen is truly horrifying. I originally thought he would still need a period of time to grow. Seems like he has already grown. The experts of the older generation can no longer do anything to him. Indeed, he is probably as strong as Murong Chong. Defeating opponents with higher cultivation realms, only these geniuses are able to do something like that. The Nanling province has Ji Changkong and Mu Chengshe. The Dongming province has Hua Yunfei, Duan Muqing, and the stronger Chu Chaoyun. Our Zaihe province finally has another genius that can compete with these geniuses. These are top-grade geniuses. If placed in any of the previous eras, their potential would be unlimited. However, since so many of them have appeared at the same time, there is definitely going to be a fierce fight in the future. Don't forget the experts from the royal court. The people from there are all geniuses. Furthermore, there is the demonic Princess Yingyu. If they are all added together, there really are too many young geniuses in our great Qin nation. With so many geniuses, I wonder who is the one who will stand out in the end. Currently, it seems like the royal court's Princess Yingyu. She is able to suppress the outstanding heroes. I wonder how the future will be like. Princess Yingyu cannot be considered. Her lifespan is particularly limited. She will fade away eventually. I remember that there was once a person in the Dongming province who defeated many of the geniuses there. He even spent a large sum of money to challenge several of the large noble clans. He has such a bold spirit. He is probably an outstanding genius as well. That's right, the noble clans have raised the bounty of this person again. The total reward now is 10,000 medial grade spirit stone. However, this person seems to have vanished completely. He has not appeared again. After the people on the deck saw Xiao Chen defeat Umington to the point that he was so easily frightened, they all sighed. This fight was filled with twists and turns. It was extremely dangerous and very satisfying to watch. Xiao Chen was always able to exceed everybody's expectations. Just when everybody thought he was done for, he managed to turn things around and successfully defeat his opponent. Above the water, up in the sky, the dark clouds scattered and sunlight shone down once again. Xiao Chen stood on the surface of the water and he fired out his spiritual sense like a sharp arrow, piercing through the water to search for Umington. Given Umington's situation, he was not going to be able to fend off the strange aquatic life. Xiao Chen did not wish for him to die yet. This was why Xiao Chen did not knock an arrow earlier. He was afraid that he would kill Umington and be unable to question him. In the depth of the river, Umington dragged his injured body and moved quickly in the water. There was an odd water current around him, deflecting all the strange aquatic life that attempted to attack him. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "I almost forgot, this person is a water-attributed cultivator. His survival ability in the water is better than a regular cultivator." Given Umington's strong desire to live, Xiao Chen was not surprised. This person thought over everything he did. To put it in a nicely, he was cautious. In another way, he was timid and afraid of death. There was a lack of brilliance. It felt like he scarcely realized that cultivation was a fight with the heavens. It was filled with danger and was obtained by risking one's life. Without great courage and an undying spirit, how could one overcome challenge after challenge? If one kept thinking about how to use tricks to clear these challenges and lost their spirit, they would not be able to go far on the road of cultivation. "Come out for me." Xiao Chen collected his thoughts and leapt up from the water. Then, he appeared above Umington's location and heavily punched the water. Bang! A huge water pillar appeared on the Black Dragon River. At the top of the water pillar was Umington. He was blasted into the air and was moving his body in a flurry. Xiao Chen leapt into the air and caught him by the collar before landing firmly. Umington revealed a horrified expression on his pale face. He said, "Don't kill me. I have 50,000 inferior grade spirit stones and 1,000 medial grade spirit stones. They are all yours if you let me go." Xiao Chen could not be bothered with him. He simply said in a cold voice, "Speak. Who sent you to kill me?" Umington shook his head initially. However, when he felt Xiao Chen's killing intent, he immediately said, "I'll speak. I'll speak. It's Song K, Bian Peak's Song K. He promised me 2,000 medial grade spirit stones if I kill you. It's Song K." A killing intent flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. This was not outside the scope of his expectations. He keeps bringing endless trouble to me. I can't let my guard down at any time. Unfortunately, Xiao Chen had no way to do anything to Song K. Aside from not being his match, there were no opportunities either. When Xiao Chen's strength increased in the future, the first thing he would do was get rid of Song K. Boom. Xiao Chen removed Umington's spatial ring and smashed his chest with a palm. His heart vessels were ruptured and he bled out of his 5 apertures. He said in a dissatisfied tone, "Weren't you going to spare me?" TL. 5 apertures refers to the 5 holes on the head, 1 mouth, 2 nose, and 2 ears. Xiao Chen was expressionless as he said sullenly, "My apologies, but I never said that. I will never leave a potential issue alive, that is just asking for trouble." Then, he watched as Umington's corpse slowly sank into the water. Xiao Chen took a glance at the merchant ship not far away. After thinking for a while, he made up his mind. He would traverse the Black Dragon River on his own. He would not ride on that merchant ship. The main reason was he was afraid of dealing with the social niceties and wasting time. His figure flashed in the air. He executed the gravity spell and flew up. 3 days later, in the evening, Xiao Chen sat beside a bonfire on the Devil Savannah. He was eating some cooked lightning ox meat. The meat of spirit beasts was much more delectable than the meat found on Earth. There was no need for additional seasonings as it was already splendid and would leave a rich aftertaste. Furthermore, the spirit beast's meat contained some natural spiritual energy. Eating it for a long time could strengthen the body, replenish qi, and raise the spirit. If one was eating the meat of a high-ranked spirit beast, like a rank 8 or rank 9 spirit beast, simply eating it could raise the cultivation realm of a person. A heavy fragrance lingered on the Devil Savannah. It attracted a large number of spirit beasts. However, when they saw Xiao Chen, they did not dare to make a move. They simply took a glance from afar and left. Xiao Chen's spiritual sense had been expanded out and he saw all of this. He revealed a faint smile on his face. 2 days ago, he used the gravity spell and flew directly to the Devil Savannah. After that, he had been using the bandits and spirit beasts he ran into to practice his sabre. As a result of the unending combat experience, he was getting more familiar with the first 6 moves of the Wukui sabre technique. Furthermore, he was also getting better at using the newly created Rushing Thunder third chain chop. He already had a good grasp on the stage of storing power and he could make use of it freely. The longer he took to gather momentum, the more mighty it would be. If the time taken was short, it would be weaker. He needed to be flexible when using it. The might of the Rushing Thunder roars was greater than Xiao Chen had anticipated. He had once stored power for an entire minute and he was able to decimate a large group of bandits. The thing he needed to do now was to do his best to gather as much momentum as he could within a short period of time. Once he accomplished that, this move could become one of Xiao Chen's new killing moves, becoming an important trump card. Wukui. Late in the night, a snow-white figure appeared in Xiao Chen's vision. When he looked carefully, it was Xiao Bai, who carried some spirit herbs in its paws as it ran over. Like before, when Xiao Chen and Xiao Bai were alone, Xiao Bai would help him find precious spirit herbs. Xiao Chen would refine most of these into higher-ranked blood-replenishing pills and qi-returning pills. This meant that Xiao Chen did not have to buy herbs but would still have medicinal pills to use. This helped him significantly. Xiao Bai presented the spirit herbs to Xiao Chen as though it was offering a tribute. Xiao Chen smiled slightly and carefully counted them. Rank 4 Blood Sun Flower, Rank 500 Jade Spirit, Rank 4 Noble Wind. Oh, this looked like the tendon refining flower. Xiao Chen's gaze was attracted to a white flower. The flower looked very ordinary. It did not have any bright colors, or a fragrant smell. It was extremely simple. Xiao Chen picked it up and examined it carefully. He was finally sure that this was the tendon refining flower. It was able to improve the toughness of a cultivator's meridians. It could also repair damaged meridian and was incredibly precious. There were many spirit herbs that could repair the meridians but they were not as good as the tendon refining flower. The tendon refining flower could even fix a snapped meridian completely. Essence has to travel through the meridians. If the meridians were injured, the essence cannot be moved. If that happened, the cultivator was as good as crippled. If one could increase the toughness of their meridians to a certain extent, they would not need to worry too much about forcibly using too much essence and causing an injury to their meridians when one cultivated or fought. Although Xiao Bai did not know about the importance of the tendon refining flower, it revealed a joyful expression when it saw that Xiao Chen was happy. Xiao Chen carefully put away the tendon refining flower and a doubt suddenly appeared in his head. A precious herb like the tendon refining flower would definitely have a strong spirit beast standing guard beside it. Although Xiao Bai was strong and incredibly fast, it should not be able to obtain this tendon refining flower easily. Could there be something I am not aware of? Xiao Chen knelt down and asked, Xiao Bai, tell me the truth. How did you get this? Xiao Bai's jubilant face immediately sank when he heard Xiao Chen's question. It was like a small child that had done something wrong and did not dare to meet Xiao Chen's gaze. Could Xiao Bai have snatched it from someone else? Xiao Chen felt somewhat ashamed in his heart. If Xiao Bai had snatched it from another spirit beast, it would not lower its head like that. I wonder who it snatched this from. Dong. 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 Just as Xiao Chen was thinking about whether he should return this tendon refining flower, he heard the urgent galloping of horses. Given the mild tremble on the ground, there should be a significant number of people. A group of more than 200 bandits appeared before Xiao Chen. One of them pointed at Xiao Bai and said excitedly, First Leader, I did not lie to you, right? I did not take the tendon refining flower for myself. It was stolen by a little fox. See, I was not wrong, there is a little fox here. Pa. Their first leader wore snow-white combat robes. It was very eye-catching in the night. He slapped the person who was speaking and shouted angrily, You fool! Why are you still so excited after a spirit beast snatched something? The other bandits all started laughing. Indeed, they were the rulers of the Devil Savannah, bandits who incited fear at the mention of their name. They robbed other people and killed spirit beasts. Since when did they have something stolen by a spirit beast? This was very embarrassing for a bandit. The bandit on the ground felt a burning pain on his cheeks. When he heard everyone laughing, he blushed even deeper. He really wanted to find a hole and hide in it. Suddenly, he glanced at Xiao Bai and a fierce look appeared in his eyes. Then he pounced over and cursed, I don't believe that I can't deal with you. Watch me teach you a lesson. Xiao Chen did not make a move. Xiao Bai turned around and swung its paw, sending a strong berserk wind at the bandit pouncing over. The bandit was immediately blown back. As an inferior grade martial saint, Lu Sufeng had been easily toyed with by Xiao Bai. How could a martial grand master bandit be a match for Xiao Bai? The bandit rolled over on the ground several times before he got up. He was completely disoriented when he did so. He walked over to the bandit leader in confusion and cursed out, You beast! Don't think I won't recognize you when you are riding a horse. After he said that, he launched himself over. The first leader was extremely furious and he sent out a palm wind, smashing this person away. The leader had a sullen expression as he said, Piece of trash, we are better off without him. When Xiao Bai felt the killing intent from the first leader, it sensed some danger. It immediately jumped onto Xiao Chen's shoulder and it felt much safer. Then, it made a face at the bandits. Damn it. Now, even foxes know how to make a face. When the crowd saw Xiao Bai making a face at this time, they were astonished. Since this is something belonging to the bandits and it has been snatched away already, then so be it, Xiao Chen thought to himself. Xiao Chen swept his gaze across the group of bandits. Of the 200 of them, the weakest was a medial grade martial grand master. The core group was 20 martial saints. The white-clothed first leader had the strongest cultivation, he was a superior grade martial saint. His combat prowess should be slightly weaker than Xiao Chen's when he first left the sect. However, Xiao Chen was now on a completely different level. The white-clothed bandit spurred his horse and trotted within 10 meters of Xiao Chen. He said in a malicious voice, "Regardless of whether you took my tendon refining flour or not, hand over your spatial ring. Otherwise, don't blame me for killing you." Xiao Chen revealed a faint smile and said in a soft voice, "If you have the ability, then come get it yourself." Reckless. The white-clothed bandit pushed off with both his legs and dismounted. He headed for Xiao Chen in an instant. The bandit's killing intent merged together with a baleful aura. It was like a sharp sword piercing toward Xiao Chen's mind. This white-clothed bandit actually knew some mental attacks. Unfortunately for him, Xiao Chen's mental strength was very strong. A mental attack of this degree was useless. Playing with mental attacks. I shall play with you then. Xiao Chen's lips curled up in a cold smile, and his huge spiritual sense turned into a divine being that wielded a keen sword. It knocked away the sword flying over and rushed toward the white-clothed bandit. Suddenly, the bandit felt everything in front of him disappear. The bandit felt like he was in a vast desolate land. There was a divine being up in the sky that looked down at him sternly. It cried out in a heavenly voice, still not kneeling down after seeing a deity. The white-clothed bandit panicked and realized that this was a mental illusion. He bit his tongue hard and drew some blood. The pain that he felt woke him up. This deity was an imitation of the imprint that the sage left in the silver warship. This was only a casual move from Xiao Chen. There was not much practical use in combat as it could only captivate an enemy of the same cultivation realm for an instant. However, an instant was already sufficient. By the time the white-clothed bandit woke up, he discovered that Xiao Chen was already in the middle of a kick. Bang! The white-clothed bandit could not react in time. He could only get kicked while the other bandits watched on with stupefied gazes. The group of people before Xiao Chen were indeed Jin Dabao's guards. There were about 200 people who were stripped of their clothes. They were left with only shorts to cover themselves up. In the middle of the crowd was a broken-down carriage. Xiao Chen looked at it for a long time before he discovered it to be that luxurious golden carriage he once rode in. However, it looked very shabby and broken down now. The golden exterior and ornaments were both gone, leaving behind only the smooth wood. There was a pair of golden wheels under the wooden box. If it were not for this pair of wheels, Xiao Chen would not have related it to the golden carriage he saw in the past. What made Xiao Chen even more speechless was that Jin Dabao was dressed in beast skins and was carefreely sitting in the carriage. Furthermore, the ones pulling the carriage were his subordinates. Even the horses had been taken away. The group of people were rushing quickly through the savannah. It was like they were running from something scary. Jin Dabao called out loudly, "Will you hurry up? This fat lord is not that heavy. You are all martial-grade master cultivators." The faces of the subordinates scrunched up and they complained, "Young master, we have been running for 2 days and 2 nights already. Let us rest for a while. Otherwise, we should abandon this carriage and you run together with us. That way, we will be faster." Jin Dabao said angrily, "This fat lord worked so hard to obtain these 2 wheels. How can we just toss them aside? If we did so, my effort would be wasted." The manservant following behind the carriage suddenly said, "Young master, there seems to be someone there. He has been staring at us." The fatty said in a huff, "Damn it. Watch me destroy him. Never mind, never mind. Let's just ignore him and quickly leave this blasted place." The manservant continued, "He seems to be walking over to us." The fatty's expression changed and he turned his head. When he saw the figure walking over, he revealed a smile and said, "Stop the carriage." The fatty was wearing a pair of shorts and a spirit beast skin on top. He seemed like a caveman. He quickly ran to Xiao Chen and said, "Lord Xiao, it is great to see you. Don't say anything yet, give this fat bro some clothes to wear first." When Xiao Chen saw the fatty's miserable state, he could not decide whether to laugh or cry. A very famous phrase from his past life came to mind: you reap what you sow. Xiao Chen had plenty of spare clothing in his universe ring. However, the fatty was very stout and could not squeeze into them. He could only casually drape them over his body. Although the fatty still looked miserable, it was still better than the beast skin. Jin Dabao did his best to squeeze into the trousers that Xiao Chen had handed over. After a long time, the fatty finally successfully squeezed into them. However, the moment he relaxed, there was a ripping sound and his fatty flesh burst out of the trousers. The trousers became pieces of cloth. Jin Dabao's face was filled with helplessness. He could not be bothered about it and just did his best to tidy himself up. Then, he turned to Xiao Chen and said embarrassedly, can Lord Xiao spare me some spirit stones?" Xiao Chen was sweating in his heart. He said, "You were really robbed." The fatty raised his hands and said, "Is that not obvious? Aside from my spatial ring and a coffin lid, I only have 2 golden wheels. The affairs of the world are fickle. Heaven and earth cannot be predicted. Life is full of unexpected things." Xiao Chen smiled bitterly. Even the fatty has such a downfall. It can be said that heaven has eyes. TL notes. Heaven has eyes. It is a Chinese way of saying justice is served. This stems from the belief of deities and that they are watching over everything. Xiao Chen took out 1,000 inferior grade spirit stones and 10,000 taels of gold. Then, he handed them to Jin Dabao and said, "What happened? Given your strength, even if you can't defeat them, you should have been able to run away." Although the fatty's strength was merely average, he had many good items. The glittering rings and trinkets he normally wore were not merely decorations. They were all complete secret treasures. It could be compared in this way: if Xiao Chen and the fatty ran into a peak martial king, the one more likely to escape easily would be the fatty. This was because this fellow had too many trump cards. Otherwise, he would not be so unrestrained in the way he acted. He had a certain level of assurance in his heart. If the fatty had not kicked an iron board, he would not end up in such a miserable state. Xiao Chen was very curious. Who was this iron board? What exactly happened for the fearless fatty to suffer such a disadvantage? Jin Dabao accepted the spirit stones and gold. Then he said, "Thanks, this fat bro will remember this favor. Don't ask me what happened. Anyway, don't be too ruthless on the devil savannah. I was cheated by someone and will not come back again." After the fatty said that, he waved his hand and jumped onto the bear carriage. His attire consisted of tattered trousers with long robes draped on him. The fatty waved his hands in a pompous manner and said, "Let's go." Their faces scrunched up as they pulled the battered carriage. Then, they slowly vanished from Xiao Chen's sight. In the following 2 days, the bad feeling in Xiao Chen's heart was even more obvious. However, because of the fatty's bitter encounter, Xiao Chen became even more cautious. He always left his spiritual sense extended to an area of 2,000 meters around him. Even though this would decrease his speed, it was good to be cautious. Xiao Chen did not wish to end up like the fatty. On this particular day, Xiao Chen was walking on the vast savannah with his spiritual sense extended out. He discovered an extraordinary place. In the area 2,000 meters around it, there were no sounds at all. It was extremely quiet. Usually, Xiao Chen would be able to detect some spirit beast with his spiritual sense. However, he did not detect any here at all. He did not know where all of them went. Xiao Chen frowned and stopped moving. He said doubtfully, "What's going on? Why are there no spirit beasts at all? Even the air seems like it has stopped flowing." With a thought from Xiao Chen, his spiritual sense stopped moving in the shape of a halo. Instead, it gathered together and turned into a fine thread, extending forward. After Xiao Chen's spiritual sense was turned into a fine thread, he could observe up to 10 kilometers away. Eventually, He discovered something. At the end of Xiao Chen's spiritual sense, there was a flood of darkness that quickly headed in his direction. When Xiao Chen looked carefully, this flood of darkness was comprised of a group of knights dressed in black armor riding on horses. A rough count gave about 1,000 men. Their combined aura made Xiao Chen's spiritual sense feel a strong pressure despite the far distance. Xiao Chen withdrew his spiritual sense and his expression changed. He muttered, "Jin Dabao, are these the people you suffered a loss to? I should change my direction." Just as Xiao Chen was about to move away, he suddenly thought of something. He sent out his spiritual sense and discovered that these horrifying black knights were coming from all directions. "I'm surrounded." Xiao Chen could not help but look toward the sky. If there was a gap, he could leave easily. It was unknown when they had arrived, but when Xiao Chen looked up, there was a group of berserk wind vultures. On each of the berserk wind vultures was a knight dressed in black armor. Xiao Chen could not help but smile bitterly. He said, "This is truly, there is no path to heaven one can go, no door to earth that one can enter." TL note. There is no path to heaven one can go, no door to earth that one can enter. This means one was in desperate straits and has nowhere to escape. Dong. 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 The sound of galloping horses could be heard. 10 groups of black knights kicked up dust into the air. Each group of black knights had 1,000 men each. Altogether, they had 10,000 men. Xiao Chen looked at the black mass. The lowest cultivation he found in this group of 10,000 was Martial Grand Master. There were at least 1,000 martial saints. When the aura from the 10,000 gathered together, even the air stopped moving. It made breathing feel difficult. This was no longer on the scale of bandits anymore. Probably only the elite troops of the Great Qin nation had such strength. The leaders of each group, 10 of them in total, were riding on black horses. They wore masks that obscured half of their faces. They rode on the horses and moved before Xiao Chen. The one in the middle was probably the leader of all of them. He was a peak martial king. Just one glance caused Xiao Chen to feel unimaginable horror. When that person saw Xiao Chen's calm face, he revealed a faint smile under his mask. He said, "Qingyan peaks Yi Chen right. Didn't anyone tell you not to be too excessive on this devil savannah? Hand over 500,000 inferior grade spirit stones and 5,000 medial grade spirit stones and you may leave. You are not allowed to come back to the devil savannah," the person leading them continued. Xiao Chen's expression did not change. He was thinking very fast. This demand was too excessive and it was impossible for him to agree to this. He said sullenly, "And if I don't?" The leader was not too surprised by Xiao Chen's answer. He smiled faintly and said, "You have seen Jin Dabao's end, right? His initial answer was the same as yours. So the fatty was really targeted by this group." The depths of the devil savannah was deeper than Xiao Chen had imagined. No wonder when the 3 noble clans came to raid the bandits, they had to return empty-handed. When the person saw Xiao Chen remain silent, he said, "You are different from the fatty. You still have not pushed things to the extreme yet. It is fine for you to not pay the spirit stones. You just have to withstand 3 palm strikes from me. I will give you 100,000 inferior grade spirit stones and 1,000 medial grade spirit stones after that. However, like before, you are still no longer allowed to step into the devil savannah." Xiao Chen was not in a rush to answer. The 2 conditions this person gave were not good choices. The first option would bleed Xiao Chen dry. The later option seemed fine. Not only did it not require him to pay any spirit stones, they would instead give him spirit stones. However, the palm strike of a peak martial king would not be easy to withstand. Even if he did not die, he would be heavily injured. Unfortunately, the situation was controlled by his opponent. Xiao Chen did not have many trump cards he could choose from. If he had not guessed wrongly, The opponent was taking his identity as a heavenly saber pavilion disciple into consideration. Hence, they were not in a rush to make a move. Otherwise, they would not have wasted so much time to speak with him. His end would be similar to Fatty Jin's. Not saying anything. In that case, I will take it as you choosing the second option, the black-clothed man said indifferently. The moment he finished speaking, the black-clothed man had already dismounted from his horse and arrived before Xiao Chen. He sent out a palm strike at Xiao Chen. There was a boundless scream and the air parted like it was water. Xiao Chen's expression turned grave. He had no other choice. The dragon and tiger body sculpting art circulated quickly and all the bones in his body crackled. The image of a fierce tiger materialized behind him. There was a loud bang as the fierce tiger merged into his arm was sent flying at the black-clothed man's palm with a strong force. Xiao Chen did not hold back with this punch and it had a force of 9,000 kilograms. Bang! The palm and fist met each other and gave off a loud sound. Visible shockwaves spread out in all directions, leaving ripples in the air. A huge force was transmitted into Xiao Chen's body through his arm. Xiao Chen felt his internal organs churn while the qi and blood in his body surged. He could feel some blood rushing up his throat. When the black-clothed man felt the force from Xiao Chen's fist, he was somewhat astonished. Xiao Chen had actually gone head-on against his palm strike yet was not pushed back. Move back. The black-clothed man shouted in his heart. A hidden force came from his palm and a horrifying energy was transmitted. Xiao Chen vomited a mouthful of blood and was blasted back. Wukui. Before Xiao Chen could stand firmly, the black-clothed man sent over his second palm strike. He did not give Xiao Chen any time to react. Xiao Chen's left hand took the stance of the dragon and his right hand took the stance of the tiger before he crisscrossed his arms. The tiger and dragon merged into his body. This was the third move of the Great Dragon Tiger Fist, Crouching Tiger Hidden Dragon. The Crouching Tiger Hidden Dragon was able to withstand 25,000 kilograms of force. When the black-clothed man smashed his palm against Xiao Chen, it was like hitting a mountain. There was a loud rumble and the ground started to shake. Xiao Chen did not hesitate. He knew that this person would play some tricks and use some hidden force to attack him. As such, he immediately moved back quickly. The dragon and tiger body sculpting art circulated non-stop. By using the might of the Crouching Tiger Hidden Dragon, he continued to gather energy. The tiger and dragon that circled above him looked very real. They both growled in a low tone continuously. The black-clothed man revealed a smile under his mask. He said, "Not bad, you have already received 2 palm strikes from me. There is one last palm strike. If you can withstand it, you may leave." Xiao Chen remained silent as he watched the black-clothed man fly over. Suddenly, he shouted and the roars of the tiger and the dragon came from his dantian. The sound was like thunder, reverberating in the surroundings unceasingly. Eventually, they gathered together and turned into a strong aura that rushed up to the sky. The clouds that were struck immediately scattered. Dragon roar covering the world, piercing through the sky. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chen's dragon and tiger body sculpting art broke through to the peak state at this moment. It had rushed up to the sky and scattered the clouds in one breath. Xiao Chen punched out, utilizing the energy stored up by the Crouching Tiger Hidden Dragon. The air seemed to be pierced by this punch. A series of deafening sonic booms resounded non-stop. However, the third palm of the black-clothed person was much stronger than his earlier 2. Even if he had not used 70% of his strength, it was at least 50%. Bang! A loud sound rang out and resounded through the vast savannah. It was like a roar that could shatter stones and shake the firmament. All the nearby horses were startled and horrified by this sound. For a moment, there were all sorts of noises that merged together and the scene seemed incredibly chaotic. The strength of Xiao Chen's punch had far exceeded the black-clothed man's expectations. It contained 12,500 kilograms of force, causing him to take 3 steps back. Each step the black-clothed man took, a deep footprint was left. The surrounding earth shook and many knights fell off their horses as a result. Xiao Chen was in an even more miserable state. The hidden force sent by the black-clothed man was incredibly terrifying. It poured into Xiao Chen's meridians and moved around forcefully. It completely disrupted the flow of his essence. Xiao Chen vomited 3 mouthfuls of blood in the air and was blasted back by at least 100 meters. After that, he landed on the ground violently and vomited another mouthful of blood. The difference between an inferior grade martial king and a peak martial king is too great. Even though I can defeat the inferior grade martial king Umington, there is no chance of victory at all when facing a peak martial king. My current combat prowess is better than that of a peak inferior grade martial king. I can even hold myself against a medial grade martial king, but if I run into a superior grade martial king, I should quickly flee. Xiao Chen thought to himself. These 3 palm strike gave him a more objective understanding of a peak martial king's strength. Xiao Chen pushed himself off the ground and stood up again. He swallowed a blood-replenishing pill and then he asked the black-clothed man, "May I ask for the name of your distinguished self?" The black-clothed man tossed out boxes of spirit stones and said indifferently, "With your strength, you are qualified to know my name. It is Chu Jun. Here is 100,000 inferior grade spirit stones and 1,000 medial grade spirit stones. Take them and leave. Don't come back to the Devil Savannah again." Xiao Chen slowly wiped the blood away from the corner of his mouth. He revealed a faint smile on his pale face. "Chu Jun, right. I will remember these 3 palm strikes and return them to you in the future." Rushing thunder roars, 10,000 horses galloping. It was unknown when, but a large quantity of dark clouds had gathered above the heads of everybody. After Xiao Chen shouted, the lightning flashed in the dark clouds and a huge electric whirlpool was formed. Countless electric knights flew out of the whirlpool. Xiao Chen hid himself among the electric knights and rushed at the black knights surrounding him. Bang! 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 As they were caught off guard, the surging group of electric knights broken through a weak point in the encirclement. Xiao Chen did not continue fighting. After he broke through, he made all the electric knights explode to cover his escape. After that, he activated the Windwalk shoes and executed the Azure Dragon cloud soaring art to its limits. His speed broke the sound barrier as he quickly headed forward. The other black knights in the opposite direction, as well as the ones in the sky, wanted to chase after Xiao Chen. Chu Jun raised his hands and stopped them. One of the other masked men at the side asked, "Commander Chu, why did you not stop him?" Chu Jun said indifferently, "Stop him. Stop him for what? To kill him. Are you not afraid of the divine saber camp attacking us again?" This kind of genius is like Murong Chong of the past. He is definitely someone the Heavenly Saber Pavilion pays heavy attention to. If we kill him, there will be retribution. A purple light flickered and Xiao Chen turned into a purple shadow. He used his essence without holding any back. He activated the Windwind shoes at full force and dashed for 4 hours before he came to a stop. Xiao Chen looked around and his pale face showed a mildly depressed expression. When he was fleeing, he had not discovered that he fled in the opposite direction from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Never mind, I shall not think of all this now. I should heal myself first. That person's energy is too ferocious. If I let it stay in my body for too long and ignore it, it will definitely leave behind some hidden injuries. Xiao Chen went to a desolated area and took out a medial grade spirit stone. Then, he started to recover his essence. Xiao Bai nimbly leapt out from the spirit blood jade and stood guard beside Xiao Chen. It helped him chase away the fierce spirit beasts wandering around. This allowed Xiao Chen to focus on treating himself and recovering his essence. The vast amount of spiritual energy in the medial grade spirit stone quickly poured into Xiao Chen's body. He had used too much essence when he fled frantically. If he did not recover his essence to its peak condition, it would not be easy to use his essence to treat his injuries. Hence, in order to treat his injuries, he first had to recover all his essence. When Xiao Chen first started, he needed an entire night to completely absorb all the energy in a medial grade spirit stone. Now, he only needed 4 hours to completely absorb all the spiritual energy in the medial grade spirit stone. However, because he was injured this time, his speed was slower than usual. 8 hours later, Xiao Chen's essence was finally completely replenished. Then he started to carefully clear out all the hidden force the black-clothed man had left in his meridians. The importance of the meridians to a cultivator need not be said. Xiao Chen would rather take the troublesome route and spend more time than to rush through it. Xiao Chen took 6 hours to clear out all the hidden force the black-clothed man had left in him. When it was finally all cleared out, Xiao Chen immediately felt relaxed. When Xiao Chen looked up, the sky was already dark. He decided to travel through the night. Then he hesitated for a while, before he gave up the idea of using the silver warship. The silver warship was too obvious, it would easily reveal his identity as a result. Back in Whitewater City, many people had seen Xiao Chen use it. If he was discovered, it would be problematic. The noble clans had not let up on their search for Xiao Chen. During this trip, in every city he had been through, he could see portraits of himself. Xiao Chen did not rest for very long and started rushing in the correct direction. Xiao Bai was following closely behind. He was not in the least slower than Xiao Chen. Following that, Xiao Chen did not meet any obstructions along his way. A journey that would originally take 5 days became 3 with the aid of the windwalk shoes. When Xiao Chen saw the outline of Lingan mountain range, the unsettling feeling in his heart became more intense. Something must have happened to someone he cared about. Otherwise, he would not have such an intense feeling. In Song Q's room on Bian Peak, urgent footsteps could be heard. The door of the room opened with a bang. Song Qian said urgently, "Father, I already received some news. Yi Chen is about 4 hours away from the Heavenly Sabre Pavilion." The one-armed Song Ke on the bed opened his eyes. A dense killing intent flashed by. He said, "Send a notice to the killers of Flying Snow Manor. After that, just ignore everything. As long as he dies outside the Heavenly Sabre Pavilion, it would be none of our concern." When Song Ke received the news that Umington was killed by Xiao Chen, he was extremely astonished. He had not expected that Xiao Chen would be able to kill off the inferior grade martial king Umington. Furthermore, Umington had a very cautious nature. This caused Song Ke to feel threatened. This fellow's strength was growing too fast. If Song Ke waited for Xiao Chen to become a martial king, his life would be in danger. This was especially so since he was now only left with one arm. Hence, before Xiao Chen matured, he had to kill him. Otherwise, if he wished to take action in the future, it would be more and more difficult. Along the way up the mountain, Xiao Chen looked at the peaks of Lingan mountain range. Suddenly he stopped because he felt a faint trace of killing qi. Xiao Chen immediately extended out his spiritual sense. He immediately discovered that 4 martial kings hid in the bushes at the roadside. Xiao Chen frowned slightly and he placed his right hand on the lunar shadow sabre's hilt immediately. It is actually the people from Flying Snow Manor, Xiao Chen thought when he saw the get-up of the 4 people. No wonder they dared to take action below the Lingan mountain range. Xiao Chen immediately felt very angry. He was very anxious as well. Even though he knew the truth of the matter, he had not expected for there to be an ambush here. Someone knew about his movements so well in the vicinity and had enough to hire martial kings to assassinate him. There was no one else apart from Song Ke. Damn it. I must find an opportunity to kill this person. Otherwise, he will cause me endless troubles. Xiao Chen thought coldly to himself. When the 4 people who were hiding saw Xiao Chen suddenly stop, they knew that they had been exposed. They did not hesitate and they drew their swords. Chi. 4 strands of dense sword chi smashed through the bushes in front of them and headed for Xiao Chen. There was a qualitative difference between the sword chi of a martial king and a martial saint. With Xiao Chen's essence, it would be difficult for him to block these attacks. However, Xiao Chen did not even think of dodging. His right hand drew his sabre with lightning speed. Glittering Wukui. A purple saber light flashed and Xiao Chen's saber quickly vibrated in the air. 4 branches of the divine Wukui tree turned into dense saber chi. They flew without any hesitation. Dang! 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 The saber chi and the sword chi clashed in the air non-stop. They gave off explosive metallic sounds. The 4 assassins moved like phantoms, each coming from a different direction as they quickly headed for Xiao Chen. The 4 of them were already inferior grade martial kings. Their speed had already broken the sound barrier and they could merge their body into the wind. As a result, their movements were soundless. Purple thunder, true fire. Shoot! A fierce flame started burning continuously in Xiao Chen's right eye and quickly condensed into a purple light. Then, it stretched out into a purple arrow. The arrow flew out at lightning speed that was faster than the speed of sound. It pierced through the chest of the assassin in front of Xiao Chen before flying into the distance like a meteor. At this point in time, it would be foolish for Xiao Chen to continue to hide his trump cards when he was surrounded by 4 inferior grade martial kings. Bang! 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 The jade pendant on Xiao Chen's chest was quickly activated. The remaining 3 inferior grade martial kings thought they could take advantage of the moment he attacked. Unfortunately, they fell for his trap and their attacks were rebounded. The huge force that rebounded from the essence shield knocked the 3 of them back. They had used their full-powered attacks. Almost all of this strength was rebounded. They were caught off guard and their essence turned chaotic. I have to finish this quickly. If I drag this out for too long, I will be at a greater disadvantage, Xiao Chen quickly thought to himself. I only have so many trump cards. If they see through them, those moves will become useless. Wukui shakes the heavens. Xiao Chen shouted and leapt into the air. The ancient divine Wukui tree materialized into existence. It carried a heaven-shaking aura that could split the earth as it pressed toward a retreating martial king. Bang! 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 This killing move that was infused with the strong state of thunder pushed back this inferior grade martial king. He had no way to resist and the divine tree caused him to vomit a mouthful of blood. After being struck by this blow, he was knocked flying again. After receiving 2 consecutive heavy attacks, that inferior grade martial king temporarily lost all his combat prowess. Xiao Chen could not be bothered with this person as he turned around and welcomed the 2 assassins behind him. A purple flickering light appeared below Xiao Chen and a strange purple flower bud emerged from nowhere. It encased him within. When the 2 martial kings struck the flower bud, there was no reaction at all. When they saw the situation, they quickly withdrew. Wukui blossoms. Xiao Chen shouted from within the flower bud. The purple flower bud started to blossom. After a while, its petals danced around in the sky and turned into many dazzling Wukui flowers. Xiao Chen flashed through the air and moved through the flowers in the sky before piercing out. Xiao Chen's speed was instantly raised to its peak. Under the light of the countless petals, he had reached 2 times the speed of sound. Pu Si. Xiao Chen, who had achieved Mach 2, pierced through an assassin without any mishaps. This speed was something they could not react to. Wukui supporting the heavens. Xiao Chen shouted and the petals in the air gathered at the assassin's wound and quickly entered it. This assassin was immediately knocked back by 200 meters. In the next instant, a huge Wukui tree grew out of that martial king's chest, pressing him firmly on the ground. When Xiao Chen made his move, the remaining assassin did not hesitate to pierce his sword at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen had already used all his trump cards. Furthermore, he had just executed a move. He simply had no way to dodge this sword. All he could do was move slightly to avoid receiving a fatal wound. Blood immediately spurted out of Xiao Chen's chest. The wound was only 6.6 millimeters away from his heart. If he was slightly closer, he might have died. Xiao Chen felt an intense pain, but despite that, he became very calm at this crucial point. Xiao Chen resisted the boundless pain and grabbed the sword with his left hand. Blood poured out of his left hand as he stopped his opponent from pushing it deeper. At the same time, the lunar shadow saber in his right hand pierced toward that person's chest quickly. Xiao Chen's opponent did not dodge. A cold killing intent flashed in his eyes as he changed his grip on the sword from a single-handed grip to a double-handed one. Suddenly, Xiao Chen felt a strong essence pouring into the sword. If the essence entered his body through the sword, it could immediately shatter his heart. This was because the wound was too close to the heart. This opponent had actually chosen to die together. The assassins of Flying Snow Manor were too extreme. Just as Xiao Chen was about to despair, a gentle cool breeze suddenly blew in the surroundings. A light flashed and the assassin's head was lobbed off. The essence that was surging in the sword immediately dissipated. The person that lost his head fell heavily. Xiao Chen watched as the person who helped him kill the two heavily injured martial king. His eyes were filled with surprise. This person was actually someone he did not really get along with, Murong Chong. It was not a coincidence that Murong Chong appeared here. After he found out Xiao Chen had taken the tendon refining flour, he had been following Xiao Chen from afar. Murong Chong watched as Xiao Chen slowly pulled out the sword in his chest. Then, Murong Chong said indifferently, "I'll let you live for now. On the 15th, I will come for it personally." Xiao Chen spread some golden salve on his wound. After he was bandaged up, he looked at the distant Murong Chong. His eyes were filled with doubt. What is going on? What is happening on the 15th? The bad feeling that I've been having, is it related to him? At the foot of Lingan mountain range, Xiao Chen immediately made a mad dash for Qingyan Peak after he verified his identity with the Heavenly Saber Pavilion guard. Xiao Chen did not even bother to deal with his wound properly. He had only spread some medicine on it and wrapped it up in a simple manner. Before he had traveled very far, he felt pain coming from his chest. However, that unsettling feeling in his heart was growing more intense. Xiao Chen was sure that something had happened to someone he cared about on Qingyan Peak. Yi Chen is back. Look. Yi Chen is really back. The disciples who recognized Xiao Chen said in astonishment when he passed by the other peaks. I heard that he killed the well-known expert, Umington, after he killed the black tuna whale at the Black Dragon River. His deeds are being praised throughout the entire Zaihe province. Indeed. Furthermore, he struck a draw with Mi Chengxie in Zaihe City. He was not at any disadvantage at all. For him to be able to strike a draw with Mu Chengxie, his name will become well known throughout the Zaihe province. However, something major happened in Qingyan Peak, causing his face-off against Murong Chong to advance. It would be hard for him to keep his life in the life and death match. It is very unfortunate. Murong Chong was already a superior grade martial saint a year ago. With his talent, he would be able to kill a regular inferior grade martial king easily. Yi Chen's chances against him are slim. The discussions in the surroundings entered Xiao Chen's ears. This caused his already anxious expression to turn even more unsightly. Lu Ruyu better be fine. Xiao Chen endured the pain coming from his chest all the way until he reached Qingyan Peak. Without thinking too much, he immediately headed for Lu Ruyu's room. The Qingyan Peak was the same as before. Cool breezes blew and water flowed and the place was filled with greenery. There were very few people and it was very quiet. Along his way, he did not meet anyone. When Xiao Chen arrived at Lu Ruyu's courtyard, he controlled his urge to use his spiritual sense to check the inside. He took a deep breath and relaxed the pained and anxious expression on his face. Dong! 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 Footsteps came from the courtyard. Xiao Chen quickly looked up but it was Lu Sufeng walking out urgently with an anxious expression. When Lu Sufeng looked up, he saw Xiao Chen at the gates. He immediately revealed a joyful expression and said, "Yi Chen. When did you come back?" Xiao Chen smiled faintly. "Not long ago, I just arrived." Xiao Chen asked in a probing manner, "Is elder sister Ruyu fine?" When Lu Sufeng heard this, his smile immediately vanished. His expression turned back into one of anxiousness. Then, he sighed and said, "Don't go in first. Let's talk at the side. My sis failed in her attempt to break through to Martial King. Her meridians were severed and she became a cripple." Along the way, Lu Sufeng calmly told him something that Xiao Chen found unbelievable. Although Xiao Chen had a premonition that something had happened to Lu Ruyu, before he got any concrete news, he still tried to keep an optimistic mindset. Severed meridians and turning into a cripple, how could Lu Ruyu accept such a result? Xiao Chen was able to understand Lu Ruyu's emotions just by thinking about it. Xiao Chen quickly asked, "What exactly happened?" Her cultivation was already very close to Martial King. Why did she try to forcibly break through? Is letting nature take its course out of the question? When the conditions are right, success will naturally follow. For a martial saint to advance to Martial King, the difficulties involved were greater than of any of the advancement in cultivation realms before it. This was especially so when trying to break through before the age of 25. The difficulties encountered would be several times higher than a regular cultivator. All the strong cultivators in history had one common point: they had broken through to Martial King before the age of 25. In other words, if one was able to break through to Martial King before the age of 25, they were guaranteed to become at the very least a martial monarch in the future. With Lu Ruyu's talent, she was already very close to becoming a Martial King at 24. Her becoming a Martial King before 25 was definite. If nothing special happened, there would be no need to make a forceful breakthrough. The difference in danger faced when forcefully breaking through compared to waiting for the right conditions was like the difference between heaven and earth. Being very close to the realm of Martial King did not mean that you would succeed in forcibly breaking through. The danger was not less. Because the time was not right yet, the risk involved did not change. Lu Sufeng shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Do you remember that she suddenly entered into closed-door cultivation after she came out from the subspace?" Xiao Chen nodded and said, "Of course I remember. She was preparing to make the breakthrough at that time." Lu Sufeng nodded. "Not long after we left, Murong Chong applied for a peak master contention battle with the Elders Assembly. My sis had probably received notice in advance. It was likely that she did not have confidence in dealing with Murong Chong and so she decided to take the risk and try to forcibly break through to Martial King. I'll let you live for now. On the 15th, I will come for it personally." Xiao Chen remembered Murong Chong's words and said, "What is the peak master contention battle? Please explain it to me in detail." Lu Sufeng explained that the peak master contention battle was the rights of the top 10 rankers on the Wind Cloud list. Within their lifetime, they had the chance to challenge a peak master to a fight. If they won, they would be the new peak master of that peak. Before a peak master contention battle, both parties had to sign a life and death agreement. As they were contending for the peak master position, it would be impossible for them to hold back. Hence, after the fight starts, life and death would be up to the heavens. Such a rule had existed in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion since it was founded. In its history, there were only 10 people who had ever succeeded.